In September of 2022, I was having a lot of pain in my abdomen and in my lower back. So I had gone to the doctor and they scheduled me for a CT scan. And they found a mass in my lower abdomen. They weren't quite sure what it was, but they thought they would go in and try to drain some of the fluid out. The positive news was that it was not cancer, but they weren't able to get all of the mass and told me most likely it would come back. They sent me for physical therapy as well as pain injections, and I just was not getting relief. I dealt with pain for about a year and noticed it just progressively kept getting worse and worse.
So I've struggled with several food allergies and sensitivities, such as lactose, gluten, soy, and egg whites for most of my life. When I would happen to eat them, which, since I'm stubborn, was pretty regularly, I would feel some amount of bloating and typically varying amounts of stomach pain.
I've struggled with and been treated for persistent depressive disorder since childhood. Over the years, I've learned to live with it and even accept it as part of who I am. In early fall, I found myself in a really dark place and I felt completely alone. I was overwhelmed and having trouble functioning in daily life. I couldn't focus, I couldn't sleep, and my mind was in a constant state of chaos. I would go to work, come home, and go straight to bed, but not to sleep. I would just lay there. My husband, my family, my small group, and even my co-workers were worried about me. This went on for 2 or more months. I would have a better day here or there, and then go straight back into the darkness. I just could not pull myself out of it, and honestly, I was scared.
We did have the healing service at Orangebridge Road, and I wasn't going to pray. I thought there's probably people here that have more problems than I have. But my daughter stood up and took my hand and said, "Mom, I want to go pray with you." So we went over to Pastor Sean, and he asked, how he could pray for me. And I told him I was dealing with some medical issues. So he anointed me and prayed a healing prayer over me.
So during Daybreak's recent series on healing and in their healing service, they shared a lot of really impactful testimonies from others who had been healed. And I'll admit that my initial reaction was doubt. I've prayed for and asked others to pray for my healing in the past, and hadn't been healed. And reflecting on that during service, I realized this being a bit dishonest, because I had also, even in those instances, doubted that he would heal me, and kind of told myself, well, I'm probably just one of those people who's not supposed to be healed.
I sat in church one morning looking at the bulletin in my hand, and I started to cry. I read the title, Transformed by Healing. As Pastor Rick spoke, I learned that we are invited to live with the expectation that Jesus desires to heal us, and that he can heal us in an instant of the brokenness that we can't change in a lifetime. I thought to myself, wow, I've never asked Jesus to heal me. I've asked him to help me through it, and I've asked him to give me peace with the fact that I suffer from it, but I've never asked him to heal me. As Pastor Rick closed the sermon, he made the offer for people to come forward for healing prayer and to be anointed. I was ugly crying at this point, and although I felt called to go up, I was afraid of what other people in the room may think of me. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to speak through the tears. But I guess more than anything, I was afraid of what might happen if I didn't go up. So I grabbed my husband's hand and I went up and I spoke one word: depression. It's all I could get out. But the prayer team, they took it from there.
A couple weeks later, I had the procedure scheduled for this mass to be drained. And as I was in the CT scan machine waiting, they pulled me back out and said, "We've got good news and bad news." They said the good news is that the mass that was 3 liters in November was now down to less than a cup of fluid. which was, they had no idea how this could happen and how this happened. But the bad news was they were still going to have to move forward with a procedure, just a different way, in order to get the rest of the fluid and the rest of the mass that was there.
The first sign of change, of his healing power was the night after that sermon, that service. Holly and I were out with some friends, and we decided to order pizza for dinner. And typically in the past, when I would have pizza, I'd usually only be able to eat like 1 or 2 slices before I started to feel bloated enough that I really wouldn't want to eat anymore. But that evening, I easily ate half a pizza, and I was still feeling great. And so that was I think the indication or the sign to me that something had changed, and that God had healed me.
I didn't feel better immediately. In fact, that night I found myself mad that God hadn't chosen to heal me in an instant. But I went for a walk the next day, and I was silently thanking him for healing me. And I'm like evaluating how I felt, and the despair that I had been feeling the past 2 months, it was gone. It was just gone. I am so thankful that I listened to the Holy Spirit's prompting that day, and that I set aside my fears and I asked God for healing. I am so thankful.
After I recovered from the procedure, I had the follow-up CT scan, and that was about 2 weeks ago now, and the mass is completely gone. I also have not had any pain since I recovered from the incision from the extraction of the fluid, so I have not had any issues since that time, and I truly know that this is God's healing power.